We're back out here once again, and today I've got some tips that are sure to help you catch much more bass, especially on those heavily pressured bodies of water. Stick around, you don't want to miss this one. I got you. That's a good one. That's a good one, honey. Oh yeah, I'm recording. That's a good one, honey. On that purple worm. Ooh, where are you going? And here is this video's featured comment. Congratulations! If you would like to have a chance to have your comment featured in an upcoming video, all you've got to do is leave a comment. And now, on with the video. Welcome back to Lowbrow Fishing. And it seems like every single time we head back out to the water, it's more crowded than the last time we were there. You've got anglers on their boats, anglers from the bank, all trying their luck to see if they can catch bluegill, crappie, perch, walleye, catfish, bass, whatever. And any bass angler will tell you all that pressure has a negative impact. It takes its toll and it makes everything so much harder. Now, if you're lucky enough to fish a private lake or Grandpa's farm pond, then you have my envy, I assure you. But for the rest of us who are fishing public lakes, then we really have to deal with that summertime bass fishing pressure. Now, if you've got a large enough lake, something like the Ross Barnett up in Jackson, 30,000 acres, can really absorb a lot of that pressure. And a lot of those larger places, Pickwick, Gunnersville, Sardis, Enid, all of those places in Mississippi around the state can absorb a lot of that pressure. But the big lake, 640 acres, and it gets overwhelmed day in and day out, especially during the weekend, it gets hammered. So what can we do? What are some of the things that we can do to improve our chances to create those opportunities when they're out there? Well, they're common sense, actually. And if you know what you're doing, if you look hard enough, you can actually use that pressure to your advantage because it causes those fish to set up in predictable ways. And we're going to get to that. But first and foremost, one of the things you want to make sure you're doing is make bomb casts. Cast that bait out there as far as you can. If you're using lighter setup, obviously if you're using finesse, you want to have it on the proper spinning gear or BFS so you can maximize your distance casting. And I've heard pro anglers say, and a lot of anglers say, you don't want to make really long casts because then you're going to have to fight the fish for that distance and you'll have a greater chance of losing it. But you're going to catch fish. You're actually going to be getting bites because that lake is so crowded, those bass know you're there. When you're walking along the bank, your feet are making vibration, those bass can feel that in the water. So the farther you cast that away from yourself, the less likely the bass are going to be attuned to your presence. And the same thing goes with fishing from a boat. Even if the water's stained, you're going to have those little ripples that are slapping off the bottom of your hull. It doesn't matter if you've got a V-hull or a pontoon or a little plastic boat. Those little ripples make noise, and they're like a beacon. The bass know you are there. Plus, in a clear water, they can see you. So your best bet is to make those bomb casts. Sure, there's a trade-off. You're going to have to fight those fish longer, but you know what? You'll be fighting fish, and that's the reason why we go out. Obviously, we want to enjoy ourselves and have fun, but for me, I want to catch fish. I'm having fun just being out there, but I'm having way more fun catching tons of fish. So that's one of the first things that we want to focus on. Make bomb casts. Obviously, if you're fishing cover, you're not going to be making bomb casts, fishing stumps or you're fishing laydowns or you're fishing piers or whatever. But for the most part, when you're searching water, when you're covering water, make bomb casts whenever you can. That's the first thing that you want to do. And the second thing is, well, when we go to the bait shop and we're looking for our favorite baits, what do we see? Well, we see those shelves that are empty, right? We see the Senkos, the Yamamoto Senkos, and we see that list of colors. We see all of them right there. And then we've got this one's full, that one's mostly empty, that one's mostly empty. And we know everybody is throwing those colors. Now, it doesn't mean that people are catching fish. It just means that that's a popular color that people are using. So use that as your guide to not fish what everybody else is fishing. Change up your colors. If you want to go natural, there are plenty of natural colors that you can use that are not watermelon red flake or green pumpkin or sexy shad, right? Everybody's going to be using those. We want to stand out, and we want to use, like I said, we use that pressure to our advantage by throwing something just a little bit different. And for me, well, black. Black is going to be one of the first things that I'm throwing, especially in stained water. And I'll even throw it in clear water because, well, it stands out. It looks natural enough that it's not going to alarm those fish. It draws attention and it gets bites. White is another one. You know, these are simple ones, right? And if you really want to go a little bit further, even if on a clear fishery, well, black blue flake, June buck. These are the types of colors that I gravitate to more in the summertime. I know everybody's throwing watermelon red flake, green pumpkin, sexy shad, things like that. And there's nothing wrong with it. The reason why everybody throws those colors is because they want to match the hatch. They want to imitate what those bass are going to be feeding on. But for myself, especially, well, then I'm going to get a little bit more wild, like this Bama craw, right? It still looks very natural, but hardly anyone's going to be using this. You can stand out, you can look natural, and you'll get those bass's attention. And the thing that I like about this color is it kind of bleeds into a brown. And I'm a big fan of brown in the summertime. And another color that I really like in the summertime are coppers, which is a type of brown, but it's a little bit more flashy. You know, if I hold the bag right, it's a little bit more flashy. You know, this is copper flash. It's a yum dinger. These things are just literally the cheapest things probably at Walmart or at your local tackle shop. But I lean more towards browns. I'm leaning more towards June bugs and black blue flake, things like that. My color selection is still very natural looking, very appealing looking, but I'm picking things off of the rack that are still pretty full. I'm not going for the ones that are empty. If the rack is empty, that means everybody's throwing it. And that means I don't want to be throwing it. So that's something else you need to consider. Don't throw the colors that everybody else is throwing. Don't be afraid to go out on a limb every once in a while. You know, sometimes it pays off. Now, this I got out of the bargain bin, that little bargain bin there at Walmart. I don't know what the color is called, but I like this color. As you can see, I've only got one left, so I'm going to have to get some more of these. This color right here, and it's kind of like a blue, turquoise, green. It's still very natural looking. It kind of glows a little bit in the water. Worked great. So that's going to be something else. Bomb casts, and don't follow the flock when it comes to your color choices. Next up, be careful of what baits you're using with those colors, right? Those bass have seen everything right now. So now's the time to get inventive. Don't be afraid to experiment a little bit, right? I'm experimenting all the time. That's why I've come up with things like Waco rigs and Freak rigs and Magnum Waco rigs, which is the new thing that I'm using. It pays to experiment. You can find your own thing, you can find your own way, and you can guarantee you will be the only one that's using that particular lure or particular presentation. You know, find out when you're out on the water, pay attention, look at what other guys are using. Now, if you're relying on dock talk, I wouldn't, because guys are not truthful. If they're not catching anything, they're going to say that they caught a ton. If they caught a ton, they're going to lie and say they got skunked. You know, dock talk is what it is. If you're going on dock talk when it comes to choosing what to fish and what not to fish, you're going to get skunked. Don't listen to dock talk. But when you're out on the water and you see those other baits, right? You see those other boats, these other anglers, look at what they are throwing. And if you can mimic what they do, but put a variation on it, especially if you think it's going to be successful, like a wacky rig, right? You see somebody throwing a wacky rig and they're using a Senko 5-inch stick bait. Maybe use a different color, maybe use a trick worm. You want to adjust a little bit. You still want to be able to finesse that wacky rig, but you want to adjust it just a little bit to give those bass something that they're not seeing, because those bass get attuned to what we throw very, very quickly. And again, that's kind of what we want to do. We want to take advantage of what those fish are going through under the pressure. You can take advantage of it because it causes those fish to set up in very predictable ways. Talked about it before. Those bass would much rather escape the pressure than they would go into their summer pattern. Now, on a private fishery or on a fishery that doesn't have a lot of pressure, obviously those bass are going to pull out into their summer pattern. And on a large fishery, on a huge reservoir that's tens of thousands of acres, obviously they're going to be comfortable enough to go out into their summer pattern. But there's always going to be things, there's always going to be places where you can find those honey holes. Look where those bass anglers are going. Look where everybody's going to, those community holes, right? Avoid those places like the plague. Find your own way. Stake out where those bass are going to escape the pressure, because we've had studies. We've talked about these studies before. The bass run and hide. Most of the bass in any given fishery have never been caught. You can use the pressure on your lake to drive those bass into certain pockets, into certain areas that only you know about and you can catch. It's one of my biggest secrets. I use that little plastic boat of mine to my advantage to be able to go places other anglers are unwilling to go. I'm going to fish that thick hydrilla. I'm going to fish that thick vegetation. Other guys don't want to do that because you can't burn a crankbait through it. I'm perfectly fine dragging a worm. I'm perfectly fine dragging a jig. I'm perfectly fine working a frog or a spook. I can do that. I don't care. I just want to catch fish. I'll work a crankbait too, if that's what it's going to take. But you've got to have that mentality. Avoid where the other people are and look where nobody's fishing. Keep an eye out where a little cut here, a little back creek arm there, Again, use Google Earth as your tool, because you might find a ditch or a drain that nobody notices, that nobody knows about, especially on a large fishery. You can always find a little nook and cranny that's so far away from what everybody else is fishing, and then you're armed with those different colors, those different techniques, and those different presentations. And I'm telling you, summertime is going to become your favorite time to go fishing, because when that lake gets crowded, you know exactly how those fish are going to respond. You know exactly what to do about it. And you'll be the one out there fishing circles around everyone, catching those giant bass. So there you have it. Some easy to do, common sense tricks and tips that you can do right now to help you catch way more fish on any pressured fishery, including the one you're fishing right now. Thanks for watching Lowbrow Fishing. We'll catch you in the next one.